I am very excited to introduce our first speaker. We have Marlene Lund joining us. Marlene is joining us from PFLAG, which is the first and largest organization for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender and queer people, their parents, their families, and their allies, right? We know that it takes a village to support each other, to care for each other, and to provide everything we need. So really excited to have Marlene here to talk more about what PFLAG does to envision an equitable and inclusive world where every person is safe, celebrated, empowered, and loved. So Marlene, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. I will share screen and get my slides going here. My name is Marlene Lund. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a representative from the Seattle chapter of PFLAG. And I am delighted to be here today to talk to you all about our organization and our mission. We have been leading with love since 1973. Here's just a little introduction. Again, my name, a board member for the Seattle chapter, and then this contact information, I understand we'll be sending out the slides from this presentation, so you'll be able to contact us. A little bit of our background. We were founded in 1973, an organization of LGBTQ plus people, parents, families, and allies who work together to create an equitable and inclusive world. We were founded by a mom in New York City, whose son was brutally attacked outside of a gay bar. And at that time, it was against the law to be gay. So the police had no interest in seeking justice for him. And so she decided she needed to speak up and advocate for her son. And in one of the very first precursors to the current Pride Parade called the Christopher Street Parade, which commemorated the Stonewall Uprising, she walked alongside of her son with a poster that said, "Parents of gays unite in support for our children." A press photographer got a picture of her, and parents from around the New York City area started to contact her and wanted to find community. They started the first support group and incorporated as PFLAG, which at that time stood for Parents and Families of Lesbians and Gays. And the rest is history. Our mission is to support, educate, and advocate for members of the LGBTQ plus community and their allies and families. We have nearly 400 chapters across the United States, including 14 here in Washington State. And we have 350,000 members across the US. We also have some international groups that work alongside of us, and you can find those locations on our website. Our culture of our theory of change is that real cultural change happens when families and friends can make authentic connections with other families and friends. That can be through geographic or cultural identity, through religion and faith organizations, or through socioeconomics. And we work within this context in order to help bring about more understanding and support for our loved ones. A gateway conversation, typical conversation if we're meeting someone who is just trying to understand what's going on with their child, or trying to understand their own identity, or just want to know more about what does it mean to be transgender, what does it mean to be gay or lesbian, or non-binary, bisexual. Just meet people where they are. We understand that people are coming from multiple different backgrounds, multiple different levels of understanding, and some come with a lot of erroneous information or prejudices, and we meet them where they are and then try to bring them along their journey. We accept that change is progressive and sometimes can take a lot of time, and so we celebrate the small wins. And we work very hard to be compassionate with mistakes in, say, naming or gender or terminology or, just general understanding. And we talk with people outside of campaigns and crises in order to be able to have those kinds of calmer interactions that make it easier to be able to reach someone. Again, our three pillars of our organization are support, education, and advocacy. Our support meetings are just that. We have, I'll go to this slide, which I think explains this better. It's a peer-supported or group organization. So all of the people who are helping to lead, to facilitate the meetings are members of the community, members of parents, and volunteers with the organization. Our meetings are kept very confidential so that people can feel safe coming if they're not out in their own environment or their lives. Everything is available at no cost, open to all, although I will say that we do have some initial screening for anyone who registers for a meeting who we don't know, just to make sure that we are not allowing someone into the meeting who might be there to disrupt or to cause a problem. So if you're signing up for the first time, you go to the website, you click on the meeting you're interested in, you click on register, and then you will get an automated email response that says, we're so glad you're interested in PFLAG, and can you tell us how you heard about us and what kind of support do you need? And then that will begin a conversation with one of the facilitators of that meeting, so we know who's coming. Once you're in the database, then we know that you are a safe person because we've already interacted with you. We are nonpartisan and secular. We are a 501c3 organization. So while we can advocate for or against certain policies or legislation, we do not support endorse a specific candidate or political party, and we do not endorse a specific religion. And you can find your closest chapter by going to the national website, pflag.org/find, and you just put in your zip code and you'll get a map that shows where the closest chapter to you is. At the Seattle chapter, we have 4 monthly meetings located in different areas around the Seattle area, as well as one that is exclusively online. We have, like I said, an atmosphere of openness and confidentiality. We stress that at every meeting, that we do not record our meetings. We do not share names of people who have come. We do not share recognizable specifics if there was something new that we learned, but we can certainly share facts or things that a guest speaker told us or something like that. But our policy is sort of like Las Vegas. What happens in a PFLAG meeting stays in the PFLAG meeting. We have the Capitol Hill meeting, which is a hybrid meeting located at a place where it's very easy to zoom in as well and have a comfortable conversation with the people in the room. Our Renton meeting is in person. Our newest meeting, which is in West Seattle, is also in person. And then the 4th Tuesday of the month, we have an online meeting, which I'm one of the co-facilitators for. We also can meet people one-on-one if they need that kind of conversation. We are great at coffee hangouts and showing up and talking with people. And we also have a helpline where you can leave a message and someone will pick that up and get back in touch with you. PFLAG National also has some specific support groups for different demographic groups that might have some unique challenges or cultural situations where it would be easier for them to be connected to other people from their culture. And so these you can find out more about by, again, going to the national website, pflag.org, connects/communities, and you can learn about those different communities and sign up for a meeting there. We have a lot of publications that are available for free. These are booklets that are published through our national office. Several of them are available in Spanish, and we are working to expand our translated copies to not only Spanish, but also other languages. We try to address things with very good, up-to-date scientific information that is supportive, encouraging, and informative. We have specifically in our Straight for Equality program booklets to help people learn how to be better allies and better advocates for their LGBTQ plus loved ones and friends, and also for working within a faith community. We have, through our national organization, free monthly learning opportunities. It's a program called Something to Talk About Live. And every month they will have a webinar on a given topic. You can sign up, subscribe to that, and you'll get an email that tells you what the topic of the month is going to be and how to connect with that. You can register for it. And you also, then, even if you can't attend at the time to the webinar, you have access to all of the webinars that have been recorded in the past. And so you can always go back and pick that up later. We are working for a just world for all. We are fighting anti-LGBTQ plus bills at the state and local level. We are advancing great bills like the Equality Act and are advocating with elected officials to try and revive that in Congress and bring it forward. We also initiated a Read with Love campaign back in 2023 when there was the beginning of the assaults on libraries, especially school libraries, where we as a local chapter provided a set of books that were either about LGBTQ plus characters or written by LGBTQ plus authors, a collection of those that had been curated to every single school within the Seattle School District for their libraries. We also, for the first time in our history, have joined lawsuits with the ACLU and Lambda Legal and other organizations to fight against some of the laws that are being passed in states that are damaging, specifically targeting, especially trans youth. The danger is persistent, as I'm sure you all know. 597 state anti-LGBTQ bills were introduced just this year, especially targeting trans youth and inclusive education. 27 states have banned gender affirming care. 19 states have anti-trans facilities bans, mostly affecting the schools. 8 states have passed Don't Say Gay or Trans bills, which directly target what teachers can teach. And it has been suggested by organizations that the Supreme Court should reconsider key cases that legalize same-sex relationships and marriage equality. So we have a lot of work to do. Something to keep in mind, statistic-wise, about 7% of Americans are lesbian, gay, or bisexual. Most Americans identify as bisexual, more do than as gay or lesbian. Bisexual adults are far less likely than gay or lesbian adults to be out to the important people in their life. And only about 1.6% of US adults are transgender or non-binary. And yet all of this attention and hatred and suppression is being directed at this very small, very vulnerable portion of our population. Another group that is not well known is the intersex population. About 1.7% of the US population is born with intersex traits, and that is about the same occurrence in the population as redheads. So they're a significant number of people. 44% of US adults personally know someone who is trans, and 20% of US adults personally know someone who is non-binary. So if you have any questions or comments, I would love to take them at this time, and I will pop up here the contact information for our chapter. If you want to sign up to volunteer, to join, become a member, or to attend one of our support meetings.
Great. Thank you so much, Marlene. If anyone has any questions, you are welcome to take yourself off mute and you can ask, or you can drop a question in the chat. Well, I'm waiting to see if there are any questions. I realized I had not introduced myself. My name is Jolyn Mason. For those who have not been to one of the UWCFD Lunch and Learns before, I am the director of UW Social Impact Programs. Lunch and Learns are one of my favorite things because I get to share some of the amazing nonprofits that I get to work with through my work with the Combined Fund Drive. And I have a question, Marlene. If you could have, if there was one takeaway you wanted us to have about PFLAG, um, what would that be? And then I'll go to Ellie's question.
I think the one big takeaway is that we are a group of people who are driven by love for our family members, our friends, and our allies. We want to make the world a safer place for them, and we want to make sure that people have better understanding.
I love that. Ellie, would you like to ask Marlene a question?
So I saw the map regarding anti-transgender bills being produced across the nation. I saw only one gray spot. I don't know if it was New Hampshire or whatever it was. My state mapping skills have atrophied over the decades I've lived. And I didn't, but I saw that there are 8 anti-transgender bills on the that have been introduced, and I'm just wondering who are the best people to contact regarding that. Would be like our state senators and state congressmen. I mean, most of the ones in my area are supportive.
Yeah, I would say yes. Contact your direct elected officials because they also need to learn to hear from the constituents who support their position. I have heard from many of our elected officials that they use the statistics of how many people contact them to use in discussions and committee members and conversation with fellow legislators. It gives them some clout. So if you have elected officials who are supportive, let them know that you appreciate what they're doing and that you're there to support them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marlene. I am going to keep us on track time-wise. And so if you have other questions for Marlene, please feel free to drop them in the chat. But I am delighted to welcome Brandon Chen and Marcia Botzer from the Ingersoll Gender Center. Say each word. The Ingersoll Gender Center. That is a tongue twister for me. Is one of the oldest organizations by and for transgender and gender nonconforming communities in the U.S. Officially formed in 1977, the Ingersoll Gender Center has been building community and connecting folks to resources and advocacy for communities in the Puget Sound for over 4 decades, which is amazing work. So excited to have you both here today.
Very good, thank you. I'm going to start us out, and happy Pride. It's Pride Month. And Pride is personal to me, so I'm going to speak personally. And thank goodness Brandon, our executive director, is here, because Brandon can do details. But I just want to tell you that, so I came up in the late 50s and 60s, and Seattle, and in those days, there simply were no services whatsoever. No clinics, therapists, support systems, diagnoses, accessible books, internets, or universities to help me understand anything about my not being male, as I appeared to be. And that, I tell you, there was one thing going on in Seattle in the late 60s, and that was a crackdown on gay men, which was in the paper. I heard about that, and that silenced me for a long time with the fear of that kind of behavior in the world. I had no words for what existed. I just want to put that out there because even though we have so much now, there are still folks who visit us who have not had an opportunity to think about gender and gender identity out loud. I left school and went to work partly because I could not make sense of my sense of self. That work led me into a union job that paid good wages and had vacation back then in the 60s. And I went to Europe in 1968 to try and find some answers. Traveling around Europe, I wound up one night in San Marco Square in Venice, and for the first time in my life, heard someone say that they knew someone who might have done something like a sex change. We don't use words like that anymore, sex change, but goodness sakes, at that moment, things coalesced. Also a feeling of not knowing what to do. But I tell you, I'm saying all this because that was the origin of Ingersoll. That was the moment when the idea that something might be done both for myself, but for others. Because while I was in Europe, I met revolutionaries and politicians and all kinds of fascinating people changing their worlds. We can do it. The union had also taught me that. So I returned, but there were years, literally, of not being able to figure out what to do or find any source of help here. But goodness sakes, by 1977, I had met folks who were activists in this area around primarily lesbian and gay issues. I had found a place called Seattle Counseling Service, now gone, and finally was able to talk with folks, which reinforced the concept that if it isn't there, we'll make it ourselves. That was the origin of Ingersoll. And we have been at it ever since. Here, I'll tell you one thing that happened. This is also, it's personal in a way I hope you can understand what we do. Once it was 1980, a young trans person from Cuba had made it to Florida. They'd heard about Ingersoll. They didn't know anything about the size of this country, but they hitchhiked across the country to be with us. They came to us, we helped, and a few years later, she had a good job and a good life. She was happy. Oh, but my friends, where is she now? I do not know. Is she being deported at this moment in this mad regime? After all that, how can such cruelty go on? We must keep working, and that is what Ingersoll is doing. We keep working, and one of the ways we keep working is through our heart, and that is our support group. We started with a support group focused on trans, focused on what we call non-binary, non-conforming now, and we still do it. We will have our 2,683rd consecutive weekly meeting tomorrow on Wednesday night. We do it every week, Wednesday, as with the absolutely magnificent parents and friends. Oh my goodness, PFLAG. As with them, we do our support groups both in person occasionally and always online. Oh, friends. There's so much more that we do. Brandon will get to that. But here's another personal thing. I have been lucky. I did not think I would ever solve my own issues or be able to participate in the world, but I can. And that's a message we help transfer to everyone who comes to us. I've spoken to many people, the politicians and pundits, the 300,000 on the Mall of Washington. I've led organizations, been part of WPATH, World Professional Association for Transgender Health. I've led commissions and national groups. Oh, and incidentally, if you don't know about the state LGBTQ commission, it's new. Take a look at them. They're doing great work. And also part of many other organizations who are gone now. And that is another message. We do so much, but it can disappear in a moment. So if you're interested, join and work today. There are groups now, newer ones like Lavender Rights and Utopia that are doing fantastic work. May they live forever. But for now, we must fight. All right. I'm just about done, just about ready to pass it over to Brandon, but I can't not say that in this time, when little ideas seem rampant and the concept of hurt, not help, is also rampant, I can't urge you enough, if you have the desire or the energy, to join, to work, and to be part of the answer to the problem we face now. For the first time in years, after all these changes in the laws around licenses and ID and healthcare for trans, we now find it disintegrating, being taken away for no reason whatsoever but harm. Ah, friends, serve and help. Brandon, could you join me now and please let them know a little bit more about what we are doing in our day-to-day work?
Thank you, Marcia. It's nice to be with all of you folks. Hi, everyone. I'm Brandon, he, him pronouns, the executive director for Ingersoll. And first of all, I'll say, this is the best, beautiful time of year here in Seattle. It's always a conundrum when we're not 100% ourselves. So I will try and keep it short. I hope you can endure my little raspy voice or just put me in that same group of sexy people like Bonnie Raitt and Harvey Firestein who have these raspy voices that you have to listen to. So as Marcia mentioned, one of our primary, most enduring services is our peer support group that started, back in the 70s, and we host them every week, every Wednesday now. Prior to 2020, when COVID hit, we had those exclusively in person. Now they are, for the most part, online, although we've resurrected on the fourth Wednesdays an in-person group. They are attended every week by anywhere from 40 to 70 plus individuals, all identifying or generally identifying as trans or non-binary. We do have a group that we host on a couple of weeks for friends and family. So similar, there's other options for individuals of those family members like PFLAG who may want to attend. But our groups really are there to open space for individuals who identify as trans and non-binary. When we went online, it expanded the opportunities for our outreach, meaning that while we historically have had office space here in Seattle on Capitol Hill, and we still do, going remote has allowed us a wider reach. So we get individuals from across the state attending as well as out of state. Our team in-house is very small at the moment. Myself and our peer peer support group manager. That said, all of our facilitation is done with volunteers who themselves identify as trans or non-binary. So that expands our team anywhere to an additional 15 to 20 individuals. So it is a larger group that supports I would say a good number of individuals here in Washington State. And thanks, Marlene, for that stat on trans non-binary folks. But I can affirm that while nationally there might be just that 1.6%, when you see 40 to 70 individuals showing up every week, it is always heartening to me to know that we have a really large community here in the Pacific Northwest that identify as such. Let's see. We also have the good fortune of collaborating over the last couple of school years with one of your own here at UW. Shout out to Q Center and their staff. So for the past couple of years, we've been able to collaborate and host for UW students at the Seattle campus a peer support group either once or twice a month. And those individuals also have opportunity themselves to attend our other meetings. But it's been really a wonderful opportunity to be able to have that expanded service for the LGBTQ plus, or specifically the trans students here at UW. Just sort of in closing for our services, and so we can get to Q&A, and I do want to make sure we have time for the other orgs. We also support and offer services to the healthcare providers who do gender affirming care for the trans community. We have here at Ingersoll a database of providers that offer either medical, mental health, counseling, body work, voice work, and such. So individuals, the providers can self-identify or come to us if they want to be listed on that database. We also offer or have a listserv for those providers. So that's via email. There's a lot of chat going on there with questions, ask for support, referrals. And then we've also resurrected a discussion group for those providers. That service is also really key because, as was already mentioned, the trans community is being targeted and identified by current legislation or this particular administration with regard to their livelihood. So when I say that, I mean there are legislation, policies, directives through executive orders to try and remove or eliminate healthcare for individuals who live their lives as trans, non-binary, restrictions to sports and other activities, the service in the military. It is, it's a big issue for this community. So thank you for allowing us to be here and share time with all of you folks. And with that, I will pass it back to Jolynn. And again, thanks everybody.
Thank you so much, Brandon and Marcia. I really appreciate you being here today. If anyone has any questions for Marcia or Brandon, please feel free to throw your digital hand up. You can just take yourself off mute. You can drop it in the chat. I do want to call out in the chat, there were several people, Marcia, who thanked you for your work and your efforts. That could not have been easy work to do. It was a difficult time to do it. And I'm really grateful that you found your place and your voice and that you're continuing to do work that matters. And if we don't have any questions, you can also ask questions again at the end if they come to you. I will just tell you all a little story about the Ingersoll Gender Center as I introduce our next speaker. So I first encountered the Ingersoll Gender Center when I worked in my first permanent gig at the UW. I worked in the Department of Psychology. And I was assisting Christina Olson, who started the Trans Youth Project that was founded here at UW, which is we have Gray Raber from TYP speaking next. And the Trans Youth Project was the first longitudinal study of trans youth in the US. So prior to that, the instruction had been, if you have a son who thinks he's a girl, don't ever let him touch anything pink and buy him a lot of trucks, right? Like, because that's the way people's minds work. And so meeting Christina and talking to her about this project and getting to do some initial fundraising work in that space, I was really excited to meet some of the folks who were part of that community. So I met some of the team over at Ingersoll Gender Center. And one of the things that I was really surprised about, because this was not that long ago, this was 12-ish years ago. At that time, Children's Hospital wasn't providing gender affirming care, right? And so we had a lot of doctors from Children's showing up for this work who were looking for science-backed evidence to say that this matters. And so I'm extremely grateful that the TYP continues to do that work. And Gray, would you like to tell us more about it?
Absolutely, I would love to. I first just want to thank everyone today for presenting and doing the advocacy that you do. You're doing fantastic work, and I know it's not always easy, so thank you so much. Yeah, and I will share my slides. So hi, everyone. My name is Gray. I use they and them pronouns. And today I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the Trans Youth Project. Also, by the way, I will be moving to Seattle actually this fall. I'm joining the University of Washington as a graduate student in the psychology department. So I'm happy to get an introduction to the queer community in Seattle right now. Thank you guys so much for having me. Great. So just to walk you through a little bit about what I will be talking about today, I'm going to first just start with a few helpful definitions for the purpose of this presentation that of phrases I'll be using throughout the presentation. Then I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the Trans Youth Project. And then I'll discuss some of the key findings from our project, as well as some of the future directions for our research. And then I'll open it up to any questions y'all might have at the end of the presentation. So to start with some helpful definitions, throughout this presentation, I'm going to be using words like transgender, cisgender, and gender diverse. And we have some very specific definitions for these in the research that we're doing that might not apply to ways that you hear them in common conversation. So I just want to define them for how I'll be using them today. So when I refer to someone who is trans or transgender, I'll be referring to any person whose gender identity does not coincide with their assigned sex at birth. And if I refer to someone as cis or cisgender, I'm referring to a person whose gender identity does coincide with their assigned sex at birth. And when I use the word gender diverse, I'm referring to someone whose identity does not necessarily align entirely with just being a boy or just being a girl, but might be something like non-binary, genderqueer, agender, demi-boy or demi-girl. Just to give an example, of when I'm using the word transgender, I'd be referring to someone like Leah, who is a trans girl. Leah was assigned male at birth, but from an early age asserted that she was a girl and lives publicly as a girl with the support of her family and friends, and wears girl clothes, hairstyle, clothing, and uses she, her pronouns. When I refer to someone who is cisgender, I'm referring to someone like Sarah, who was assigned female at birth and lives publicly as a girl. And if I'm referring to someone as gender diverse, I might be referring to someone like Sam, who was assigned male at birth, but identifies as non-binary, uses they, them pronouns, and may present as feminine or masculine, depending on the day. So just to start out by kind of situating the Trans Youth Project in time, the Trans Youth Project started in 2013. And around this time, there's really an increasing visibility of trans folk in media and the public, and trans youth especially as well. In 2007, Jazz Jennings, a transgender girl, had one of the first public facing interviews of a trans child with Barbara Walters on 2020. And also around this time, there's kind of a growing media attention for transgender public figures like Laverne Cox, the actress, or Caitlyn Jenner. And generally, people were I have this helpful graph here of the Google searches for the word transgender since 2004 to 2023. People were generally beginning to learn more about what being a transgender person means, and just kind of learning what that definition is. And so this is kind of what inspired the beginning of the Trans Youth Project. We wanted to get more information about what it means to be a trans youth, what these trans youth experiences were, and what was helpful for them in their development. So the Trans Youth Project began at the University of Washington in 2013 and was started by Christina Olson. And it was the first and is the largest longitudinal study of trans youth to date, and it intended to follow these youth for 20 years. And I'm very excited to say we're in year 12 right now and still going strong. And the project was kind of interested in just learning about these kids' gender identities, their lived experiences, and tracking their mental health over time. And so we started by first enrolling over 900 youth and their families in the study. That included 317 trans youth and 218 of their siblings, as well as 377 cis youth comparisons. And what I mean by that is that for every trans youth that was enrolled in the study, we found a cisgender youth who matched them in their gender and their age, so we could kind of compare how they developed over time. And the trans youth who enrolled in this study had to be under the age of 12 to participate and have already socially transitioned. So when I say socially transition, I mean a youth who has come out and is identifying as the gender that they feel internally, is using the pronouns associated with that gender in all contexts, and is presenting with their internal sense of gender. So, for example, when I mentioned Leah earlier, Leah is using she, her pronouns and is wearing feminine clothing and presenting as a girl. And so researchers met with these families, these kids, all across the US and Canada for 60 to 90-minute visits. Today, we now collect that data via mostly surveys and Zoom visits. We're no longer traveling, but at the time, researchers flew over 160,000 miles and drove over 34,000 miles to meet with the families for the study. And just to tell you a little bit more about the kinds of kids and families that are participating in this research, we had a slight overrepresentation of trans girls when the project started, but only very small. And most of the youth and families participating in this study were non-Hispanic white youth. They all had fairly high incomes, above 75,000. And most of the parents in this study receive a bachelor degree or higher. And also most families were fairly liberal or maybe moderate. Another fun fact is that 90% of the youth who joined the Trans Youth Project in 2013 are still participating in it today. If you're a researcher, you know this is an incredibly high retention rate. It's almost never the case that you have this many people who originally enrolled in the project still participating 12 years later. So we are just so beyond grateful for every family who has signed up to participate in this study. We really couldn't do this research without them. So just to kind of give you a look into the kind of questions we're asking the kids in this study, for some of our younger kids, this image that I have here shows a question that I might ask them to determine their internal sense of gender. So I would ask a child, some people feel like they're a boy and some people feel like they're a girl, and some people feel that they're somewhere in between a boy and a girl. And I ask them to indicate on the slider where they feel like they represent their sense of gender. We also ask questions about youth's preferences for like toys and clothing or their peer preferences. So for that, we would ask something like this, asking a child to pick a toy that kind of ranges on a scale of masculinity to femininity to kind of get a picture of what their gendered interests are. And now to transition to some of our key findings, one of the first things that we found with this research is that trans youth who are supported early in their development have a very similar gender development, gender trajectory to cis youth. So they have very similar preferences for peers, preferences for toys and clothing, and also have the same understanding of gender constancy, or like the idea that gender stays the same over time. You can see in this graph, this is a graph of toy preferences in cisgender youth and transgender youth, with the blue hill representing boy preferences and the red hill representing girl preferences. And as you can see, they're very similar between cisgender and transgender youth. We have also found that the mental health of trans youth who are supported early in life is very similar to cisgender youth. So here I have some graphs of anxiety and depression among the youth in our studies. And just to kind of situate you to what these mean, the red kind of blobs here representing cisgender kids, the gray blobs are representing the siblings of the trans kids, and the blue blobs are representing the trans kids. And these black dots in the middle are representing the mean anxiety and depression scores. That dotted line is what would be a clinical anxiety or clinical depression. And then the blobs represent kind of the distribution of scores across each group. So each individual circle represents one kid. And as you can see, the means for these groups are very similar. Trans kids are doing just as well as their cis peers whenever they're supported early in life. We've also found that gender stability is very similar for trans youth and cis youth. So To orient you to this graph here, I'm showing kind of a chart of gender change over time for the trans youth in our sample. The purple section is indicating the amount of trans youth in our study who are still identifying as trans today. So they started the study identifying as a trans girl, they're still a trans girl. The blue bar represents trans youth who are now identifying with a gender diverse identity. So this would be someone who started the study maybe identifying as a trans boy, but now identifies as non-binary or a demi boy. And then the yellow bars representing trans youth who are now identifying as cisgender. So someone who started the study as a trans boy and now identifies as a cisgender girl. And as you can see, when I show the cisgender bar, which is the second bar, and the bar for siblings of the transgender youth, very similar stability of gender over time. There's some change in each group, but for the most part, kids are continuing to identify with the gender that they identified with at the beginning of our study. And finally, we've done some research into transgender youth experiences with gender affirming care. And we found that trans youth who receive gender affirming care, things like puberty blockers, which can delay the onset of puberty for trans youth, or hormones, which can allow youth to develop with the puberty that's associated with their gender. These youth are highly satisfied with that care. So when we ask them on a scale of 1 to 7, how happy are you with the care you've received? Not at all happy or extremely happy. We're seeing youth reporting that they are like a 6.38 on a 1 to 7 scale. So really happy with the blockers that they're receiving. That's the pink line there. For the blue line, really happy with the hormones that they're receiving. And we ask youth, if you regret care at all, we also find that youth have very little regret for the care that they receive. Out of the 220 youth in our sample who have access to gender affirming care, over 96% of those youth are saying that they're highly satisfied and they do not regret that care. And over 95% of the youth in our study who have access care continue to access that care today. Yes, so in summary, we found that the gender development of trans youth is similar to their peers, that their mental health is very similar to their cisgender peers, that trans youth and cis youth have similar stability in their gender identities over time, and that trans youth who receive gender affirming healthcare are highly satisfied with this care. And just to give you a glimpse into some of our future directions for this research, we plan to continue following these families for 10 more years. And we would like to continue studying how these youth mental health changes throughout being teenagers and into adulthood. Some of the youth who started this study when they were below the age of 12 are now entering their 20s, going to college. So it's really cool to get to follow up with them as they go through these major transitions in their life. We're going to examine the impact of time on youth satisfaction with the gender affirming healthcare they receive. We're interested in how changes in political support might be affecting these youth's development as well as their mental health. And we also would like to see how political messaging affects kind of the social environments of these youth as well. So thank you so much for listening to all of that information. I'm happy to answer any questions now. And if you all are interested in looking at some of our research, you can go to this link I have on this slide. Yeah, thank you all so much. I'm happy to answer any questions now.
That's fantastic, Gray. Thank you so much. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to share them. Fun fact about my family is we are one of the control group families, and my oldest son has participated in this study since he was in elementary school, and he had a college professor, like a sociology professor, talking about it in his class, and he was like, I'm in that study. And I swear that bumped him from a solid B to a B plus. So there are unintended benefits to doing this work. So I just really want to thank you. That's a good question, James. How safe is your funding?
Yes, that's a great question. And I'm going to be honest, it's a little unclear at this point. There are a few lawsuits going on trying to fight for some people who've had their funding taken away to get it back. I would say that we're very fortunate in that the Human Diversity Lab now resides at Princeton University, which is a private university who is extremely passionate about preserving academic freedom and is willing to kind of fill in any gaps from grants that we've lost because of government interference. I also think that there are fortunately a lot of people who are very passionate about learning more about the trans community and have really stepped up to help us out. So I think even if government funding isn't secure for us, we've had so much support, and I have no doubt that the project will continue. And Christina is also just so passionate
Yeah.
about making sure that we're able to continue doing this work. So
Yeah.
I don't think we'll need to worry about that, fortunately.
Yeah. If you all ever have a chance to hear Christina Olson talk about this work, I highly encourage you to do it. It is absolutely a passion project for her, and it's really amazing. I'm very excited to introduce Brennan Ham from the Q Center. Gray, you will have to meet with Brennan once you move out to Seattle, and learn more about the supports that we have for faculty, LGBTQIA plus faculty, staff, and students. Brennan, I am sorry, like there's just been so much good information. We're gonna have to shorten your time up a little, but thank you for joining us.
I can be succinct. Thanks. And great, definitely come by the Q next year. Congratulations on your acceptance to UW. Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Brennan Ham. I'm the director for the Q Center, which is our LGBTQ plus center on campus. We're located on the 3rd floor of the Husky Union building, right across from the elevator and right next to our friends in the D Center, which is our Deaf and Disability Cultural Center. So yeah, happy to have anybody stop by. We are all working remotely for the next couple of weeks up until our UW Pride Parade contingent, participating in the Pride Parade. I'm going to ask one of my co-conspirators for that work, James Fesselbahn, James, if you can drop the link to the registration for the Pride contingent here, that would be amazing. Thank you, James. And folks, anybody's welcome to sign up. The first, I think it's 80 folks, will get a t-shirt to wear at the parade. We'd love to have you. So the Q Center, for folks who are unaware, is a cultural and resource center for queer and trans student, staff, and faculty. I'm going to share my screen just a little so you can kind of see what it's like to navigate our website. You can just look up the Q Center at UW. It's sites.uw.edu/Q Center is how to find it. Or I always do a quick search engine. It's my shortcut to pull up our website. So we have some key programs. Our programs are our QMPP, which is our mentorship program for students and graduate students to connect either with graduate students, their peers, or faculty, staff, and alumni who are interested in and working in a mentorship relationship. We have our graduate student programming, which is sort of a monthly program dedicated to just connecting graduate students socially and kind of de-siloing students who are otherwise pretty sequestered away in their respective areas of study. Our gender discussion group, as Braden alluded to, is a thing that we do in partnership with the Ingersoll Gender Center. So Ingersoll Gender Center has a facilitator, and then we offer a student facilitator to hold space for trans students, non-binary students, and students who are just curious and exploring their identity related to gender and their gender experience. We have a color mode discussion group that is a discussion group dedicated to folks who are hoping to discuss experiences related to the intersection of being queer and trans and folks of color. So it's Cutie BIPOC focus, and they have fun, really cool like activities and things to do while discussing important topics. Then we also have our ASPEC discussion group that's for folks who live and experience life on the ACE and ARO spectrums. And again, they have all really fun activities and things to do and connect across shared experience. And then something that we offer a little bit more frequently is our game night. Our game night is one of 3 things. It's either video games, board games, or Jeopardy. Although more recently we experimented with outdoor fun games, but it's just a chance for folks to do a cool activity and connect across, again, shared experiences and identities. We have a library that one of our phenomenal graduate students, Lexi Santiago, put together over the last 2 years. It is a functional library where folks can come and check out books. It is not connected to the UW library system, so you would need to be a UW student or staff or faculty and create an account with us, and then you can check out books. But it's a very cool, highly curated queer and trans library. Other service programs that we have is Engender and Menstruation Station. These are both programs that are funded out of the Campus Sustainability Fund, CSF. They are incredible partners. Engender is a program that provides sustainably sourced gender affirming care items free of charge to students. That things like binders, packers, gas, trans tape, cosmetics. And then our Menstruation Station is the actually original model. It provides free and sustainably sourced menstrual products for all students who bleed on campus. You don't have to be a queer trans student to participate in either of these programs. And then we have our educational wing of work. So we offer training and technical assistance to all units on campus who request them. We have a policy literacy program that we've been piloting for the last year and a half or 2 years now, where we put together a blog post and we put together an Instagram fun, like easy reading post, usually once a month or twice a month. And then alongside that, we have our LGBTQ heritage and contemporary history post that does a similar thing, usually grounded in sort of political history, historical context or political context to understand these histories as they relate to the intersection of queerness and transness with all other kinds of facets of heritage and identity. And then we also host a CHID focus group, which is the Comparative History of Ideas department. So our eco interns, who are students who are becoming teachers or working in the education system, come together and offer a focus group to discuss different topics as they relate to queer and transness. So we had Queer Sonics, which is about music. Before that, we had a queer gaming discussion group that was really cool. So that those students run that group on a weekly basis for credit, which is very cool. We also connect folks to all different kinds of resources and such on campus. So feel free to check out our website to learn more. And a lot of that includes resources that exist beyond the University of Washington directly. And then some other things that we offer through the Q Center, we, in partnership with QFSA, which is our Queer Faculty and Staff Association or Affinity Association, supported by the OMA and D Department, so Office of Multicultural Affairs and Diversity. That work is for faculty and staff who want to connect socially. So it's a queer and trans social hour, but anybody is welcome to participate. Similarly, in terms of like the cool connections, that's really what the name of the game is for the Q Center. Is we are all about synergy and coming up with cool ways to make sure students and staff and faculty have access to each other and to essential services. So things like counseling services. So we bring the counseling center to us through Let's Talk on Wednesdays. Let's Talk from 2 to 4 on Wednesdays in our library. A counselor from the counseling center will meet with students on a drop-in basis. We also have a partnership with Seattle's LGBTQ+ Center, which I think is maybe starting to be called just the Center, formerly called Gay City, where they do a similar offering for us, where they come into space and provide free and confidential STI testing for students on a monthly basis. We work with the Career and Internship Center to offer queer career workshops. So it's resume writing, sort of how to prepare for being queer in the workplace, like especially now that DEI initiatives are ever rolling back in a lot of places, unfortunately. And that's sort of the intention is to prepare students for that landscape. Then we have Q Climb in partnership with the Crags Gym, the UW Recreation. So it's a queer and trans night where students get to participate in climbing for free. And then we also have Out in the Wild with UW Recreation, which is supported by UWild. That is a paid opportunity, but it's a chance for queer and trans students to get into nature. And then we also have our Queer and Trans Athletic Nights in partnerships with UW Athletics, where queer and trans students get to go and experience a queer and trans athletic game or centered game. So a lot of really cool stuff that we've got going on. Anybody's welcome to reach out with questions or if you have any curiosities. And then the thing I'd like to leave you with is just sort of to put my 2 cents in about how you can kind of like think about how to prepare for what's coming and what's been going on, is that things are hard and they're just going to get harder. So folks did not hear the Department of Homeland Security recently rescinded their ban against surveilling queer and trans people simply for being queer and trans. So that surveillance is now like live, and it's a little scary for a lot of folks, understandably. So what's really important is that we lean on the lessons and historical workings of our elders and our transcestors, and remember that we can push through and we can make it through thanks to their work and the pathways that they've carved for us. So shout out to Marsha Botzer. And then also to remember that for those of you who are not queer and trans, that allyship work is hard. And so as you're beginning to steel yourself, thinking about how you want to engage, remember that queer and trans don't really get to press pause. Like for homophobia and transphobia. So use your pause wisely, rest up, restore, and get it back out there to supporting us. We need you now more than ever. And also remember to speak us into every room. We don't need you to speak for us, but a lot of folks will reach out to queer and trans people and ask like, hey, what's going on? What's the thing that we can like, or is it, we get a lot of media requests like, hey, can you tell us at the Q Center, you know, how queer and trans students are feeling? I'm like, you can just open up your eyes and you'll know how queer and trans students are feeling. And so my ask of everybody is in allyship to speak us into the room, to share what you are witnessing so that the burden doesn't befall us to tend to that. The target doesn't remain on us. Like you all, we need your help more than ever. And so that is my ask as the director of the Q Center, is to support us in that by speaking us into the room. And reach out anytime. I'm going to drop my contact here. I think we're out of time, so I probably can't answer any questions now, but I certainly can by email. And thanks so much for the opportunity to share with you more about the Q.
Oh my God, Brennan, thank you so much, and for ending on such a powerful note. Yeah, I dropped, the UWCFD publishes an article every year for Pride Month. I dropped that in the chat so you can see some of the activities that are coming up. You can also see some of the organizations that are not here with us today, but are also working in the LGBTQIA plus community to make sure that people have the services they need. I think, Brennan, you're very thoughtful in saying that, you know, as allies, we can press pause. And so I think it's important now more than ever to make sure that when we take the pause, that we're not taking a pause from supporting the organizations that are doing the work that acknowledges the basic humanity and existence of the people we live, work with, and love. And I will leave you with that. If y'all have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm jolynn.m@uw.edu. I'm happy to forward them to our speakers. We will be getting this cleaned up for production and posting it. I again encourage you to share it out with people in your community, with people you care about, with people you want to know your stories or what matters to you. This, you know, this is a tough time, and the more we can, oh, thank you, Hannah, the more we can be together in sharing compassion and kindness with each other and building bridges of support for folks who don't have the luxury of stepping out of the way of the world, I think the better off we are. So I just thank you all so much for coming today, and thank you to our speakers. It was such amazing information, and I'm really grateful that you could join us and share your stories. Stories are how we learn, stories are how we grow, stories are how we change the world. So thank you very much.